All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to B-Sides and Beers. It's been a while. Haven't done a brunch or an event just because a lot of stuff's been going on. I'm Dan Baxter, if you don't know me. Tonight, I'm going to be giving a little talk with my good buddy Phil Jampo on Pink Floyd's Pastoral period. Tonight, we're just going to kind of guide you through an interesting part of Pink Floyd's career and kind of just fill in the gaps between some songs for you. So Pink Floyd, I think we all kind of know who they are. They formed in the late 60s in England. From left to right here, we have Roger Waters, Rick Wright, Nick Mason, and Sid Barrett was the founding member of Pink Floyd. A pretty solid first album with some really good singles on it. Playing some really wacky psychedelic music just to get started. And Sid Barrett on the right here actually gets a little too into the psychedelics, starts doing them all the time. There was a story he did like a 7-day binge of LSD, and they found him in lying in a street next to his girlfriend who was sobbing terribly. So he just went really hard on it. It kind of did a lot to his mental health and kind of helped started making him go a little bit crazy. So whenever they were performing or rehearsing, it made it very difficult for the rest of the band to follow how wacky he was. So they hired David Gilmour to kind of fill in his guitar parts when they were playing live and writing songs. And it was really interesting. David Gilmour mentioned later on that at this point in the career, he was like watching Sid Barrett deteriorate as he was kind of taking his songs from him and learning how to play his guitar parts and learning how to sing his parts. And it got really bad because the band was getting more and more notoriety. But Sid Barrett just wasn't really loving it, and he wasn't really playing along with the record companies. And there was their first American TV appearance. They rehearsed, and he was really excited during the rehearsals. And then when they went to shoot, he just like completely went deadpan, and didn't perform. And that went into their live shows as well. So Sid Barrett was pretty just way too out there for the rest of the band. The rest of the band wanted to move forward and keep continuing to write songs, but Sid Barrett was just a little too wacky for them. At one point, he came to the band with a song called "Have You Got It Yet," where he would play a little bit on his guitar, and then the band would play, and he goes, "No, it's like this," and then he would play it differently, and then they would play that, and then he goes, "No, it's like this," and then he plays it differently, and that went on for about an hour until Roger Waters said, "I think I've got it," put his bass guitar down, and that was the last time he ever played with Sid Barrett. So in April of '68, they were getting ready for a rehearsal, and they just didn't pick Sid up. So that's unfortunately, kind of they pushed him out of the band, and David Gilmour kind of stepped in. But they still had another album to do, and so Sid did write one song on his last album with Pink Floyd called Jug Band Blues, and we're going to start this because this is kind of the song that kicks Pink Floyd into their pastoral period. So this is a song very much directed at the other members of the band. And please forgive me, the first two albums I'm going to play are actually digital today because the Pink Floyd albums that I ordered showed up as Pink albums every time I ordered them. So let's just get into some music. Here is Jug Band Blues. This is Sid Barrett's last song with Pink Floyd. So as you can see, it's very clearly directed at the band. He was kind of seeing them replace him in front of his own very eyes, because that is a perfect Sid Barrett song. That's a perfect example of the kind of stuff he was writing and exactly why the record companies weren't really into it. He also came to them with another song for this album that they just flat out refused. It's out there somewhere. I forget what the name of it is. So that's the last Sid Barrett song with Pink Floyd, and this kind of pushes them into this weird area of he was their best friend, but they got rid of him because they know they needed to succeed as a band, and they wanted to keep writing different material that was a little more focused and a little less psychedelic like that. So Nick Mason has a really interesting quote about this point, and then I'm going to kick it over to Phil here, who's going to kind of take you through a lot of the rest. But he said, by rights, we should have been forced to start over again, but somehow we had clung onto our particular rung within the music industry. We were about to enter a period I remember as particularly happy. And so here's Phil Jampo, who's going to take us through Pink Floyd Pastoral period.
All right, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me on here. Yeah, so the first album that the band embarked on after this was a soundtrack. It was called More in 1968, and somehow the band came into contact with Barbette Schroeder, who was the director of this film. He was a prodigy of the filmmaker from the French New Wave, Jean-Luc Godard. So they were anxious to work with him and see what he would actually do with their music. And there's a great story of them actually, looking at the film in the theater and timing the sequences that they needed to score with like a stopwatch. And Nick Mason saying that that was very effective back then. Um, so from there, and during that period, they were trying to get away from Sid. I think they were trying to get away from that heavy psychedelic Sergeant Peppery vibe that was going on in the late '60s, and I think they were trying to push for other things. It's just this album, it's all over the place. Like there's some heavy metal stuff on here, like the Nile song is very heavy. Up the Khyber is very experimental, but it's great. It's a great album for a soundtrack. It's really good. But during this, the two songs that we've chosen for this pastoral period are the first of which is "Green is the Color." No, Roger Waters, he wrote the majority of the material for this album, and yeah, David Gilmour was still sort of just listening to what he said lyrically, and he wasn't writing anything during that time. He was just working together with Waters. And this, because I didn't know that, I thought Waters actually sang the song, but it was Gilmour, and he definitely lends that soft sound that is all through Pastoral Floyd to the song. And yeah, it's just a really pretty song, and it gets lost. No one, you could hear this on the radio, and if it's compared to us and them, you would never know it's the same band, I think. And I hope you guys like it. It's really great. Something worth mentioning is that definitely during this era, Richard Wright, who was the keyboardist and musical arranger in the band, um, his presence is so obvious during this period. Like the piano is him in that last song, and it definitely adds something that I don't think they had before. And him just flexing his skills, and we'll be seeing more of that as we go along. Um, so this next song,
Real
"Symbolize."
quick, one thing I wanted to hop in here and say is
Yeah.
what's happening at this period is there's a lot of little hints of where the band goes. So that's just like kind of the start of it. Is this really beautiful piano playing, and we'll touch on some other stuff soon, but just pay attention. Sorry, Phil. Go ahead.
No, no, no. um, so this next track off this album is "Symboline," and this is a big one for me. I only just heard this song like over the past summer. I was watching some documentary, um, and this song was played, and I had no idea this song even existed. And it's a great Pink Floyd track. Um, but this is them. I think that this is them touching on that sound that they would eventually get to with Dark Side of the Moon much later. But it's them sort of trying it out with this track, and it's not quite sticking, but it's still very good. A lot of people at the time, they said, because they would play this song at their live sets back then before they dropped it later on. But a lot of what I've read about it, people say that the live versions of this song, there was a lot more energy, and I think that's what they tried getting later on in their career. They went back to it, and it was like, okay, we're gonna contain this sound, and we're gonna go even farther with it. Um, but yeah, again, just listen for the end of this track. Again, great keyboard work by Richard Wright, and again, written by Waters. sung by David Gilmour. There is a version of Waters singing the song that's in the movie, but not on the album. So here's Cymbeline. Such a good track. All right, so moving on from that, um, the next album, Umaguma in 1969, was a double album, and I think one record is all live material, and the other record was, I think, the way it was divided. It was each band taking charge of a segment of it. So like there was a whole few songs, that David Gilmour wrote and he was in charge of, and Nick Mason did his own, and Roger Waters and Richard Wright. And it was Richard Wright's idea. This album, he wanted to go in a more experimental, classical music approach. He was just tired of what he was really tired of what they were doing, and he wanted to try this out. And he now regards it as pretentious. Um, yeah, some of it, I think it's a great album. If you're a big Pink Floyd fan, there's a lot to uncover here, but uh, we had to glean.
That's an understatement.
we had to, yeah, we had to be careful what we picked. But all right, The Narrow Way. This was one of David Gilmour's contributions, and at this point, he still wasn't really writing lyrics. He would come up with some great melodies. I think actually he asked Roger Waters to write lyrics for his set of songs on the album, and Waters refused. Because he's Roger Waters, and he's like, "No, I'm not helping you. You're in charge of that." And but it's really good. Like this track, I think it's definitely
And
part of the Pastoral sets. Gilmour, I think he was from Cambridge, like Roger Waters and Syd Barrett. Um, so you definitely feel that countryside in this song with a little, with some psychedelics
with just a
thrown
little
in.
space
See,
rock,
see if you
yeah.
can see if you can pick them out. So yeah, it's worth mentioning that Nick Mason says that where they recorded this, it was somewhere outside of Birmingham, and he said it reminded them all of Middle Earth. So you can definitely hear some Lord of the Rings on acid in that track. Also on this album, I'm remembering Roger Waters started interacting with this composer, Ron Geeson, who would turn up in a following album. We're going to talk about him more. Um, and I think he helped him arrange this song, which is Grantchester Meadows. This song is great. I love this one. Um, they definitely go hard to make it sound like you're outside, um, and just sitting next to some English creekside, on a hot summer day. I do think the lyrical content of this, I think Roger Waters is singing about, just being a teenager because I think he did know Sid and Gilmour at Cambridge when they were all, pretty young. And I think just from the blunt lyrics of this, you really do believe that he experienced what he's singing about. And it definitely gives some authenticity to the track, and it's just really pretty. So here we go.
It's beautiful but kind of wacky, right? Like
Yeah.
this is also like I was saying how we're starting to get some hints of what's to come with Pink Floyd. This might be one of their first uses of animal sounds on an album, which they used much later on the album Animals. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, the Foley stuff definitely continues soon after this. Um, I think we have one last track from Umaguma, and the whole title is pretty long. I think I have it written down here, but it's from Nick Mason's portion of the album. Well, anyway, this is the Grand Vizier's Garden Party Part 3, Exit. This features Nick Mason's then wife Lindy on the flute, um, and she was actually featured on Green is the Color as well, the song we started with tonight. Um, it's very, weird little piece, and that's it. Definitely lost in the countryside, English countryside sound. Um, Props to Dan for finding that little blip on that record.
It's like a couple millimeters thin. It's tricky to hit. The other song we wanted to highlight on this album is one that is a bit different from what they were doing in this pastoral period. So they were writing all these like songs kind of inspired by the country and people they knew, but they would also kind of go back to their roots and do a little psychedelic space rock. So one we wanted to point out that they wrote at this time was "Careful with That Axe, Eugene." Which Roger Waters wrote. This one's very different from the last one you just heard. Just a heads up. Um, but this song kind of encapsulates Roger Waters' fear of going insane because he watched Sid Barrett go insane because of the drugs, and they're really trying to work Sid out of their system at this time. This is kind of a cleansing point for them. They're really trying to, they're dealing with all these emotions of losing one of their best friends, both like mentally and physically, just by not including him in the band anymore. And this song kind of captures a lot of their feelings at the time, especially Roger Waters.
Dan's right. They're trying to still escape the shadow of Sid. Um, just yeah, it's a very haunting track because of that, and and the thing again worth mentioning what they were messing around with, I think, on this track, just as much as um, the dark sound of it was the length. This is a longer track, Dan, right? Um,
Yeah, so feel free to just like put this on and listen if you need to go to the bathroom. This one's a little bit longer, a little bit
yeah,
spacier. So
I feel like it's more similar to what people identify Pink Floyd with, and those big three albums and those long tracks they would do later on. So they were sort of entering that territory too now of like just longer tracks, I think.
it's just more sowing the seeds of what eventually became who they were as a band.
What they're best
So
known for.
again, it's stuff with Sid was all throughout their entire career, just kind of sprinkled through. This is a very interesting part of it though, because this is like when it's like still really raw, and they're still kind of dealing with their thoughts and emotions.
Yes.
And we're saying this is someone saying, especially in the live Pompeii version, this is awesome, and it could be maybe one of the first documented metal screams in history. So that's interesting, and keep your ears open for that. So there's the old spacey Pink Floyd that we all know and love. Um, we forgot to mention that's an instrumental song, but you can really sense and feel all of their emotions coming out, especially in that crazy, crazy screaming from Roger Waters.
Sounds like an exorcism. Seriously. Um yeah, I think definitely the atmosphere in that. I think they certainly heard that, and they're like, I think once they did that and people responded to it so well, which they did. People loved this song live. I think what they wanted to do was to try and figure out a way to, build on that, and yeah, just explore it more, which is what they did next. Well, first, first, this we have this. Okay, so Zabriskie Point was a film by where's this guy? Michelangelo Antonioni, Antonini. I'm butchering all of these. Um,
Antonioni.
anyway, another French New Wave director. He, I think, most famously made a film in 1966 called Blow Up, and at the time that movie, I haven't seen it, but it was very I think it was British, or took place in London, and just for the scene going on, that was a cool movie back then. So for them to have wanted to work with him is understandable. So they tried. And Richard Wright wrote this piece called "The Violent Sequence" for the film. Yeah, and the director rejected it for sounding too sad and reminding him of church. Uh, which is what Roger
Uh,
Waters said. What they ended up, what they this song we're about to play, they rejected. He rejected it, didn't like it, but
yeah.
they
So
did
yeah,
end
the
up.
director thought this was too sad.
Yeah,
Um, we're gonna play a little bit of it for you. Those of you who know Pink Floyd may recognize this. So let us know what you think it is in the chat here.
yes.
This is from a live show, so it might be a little rough. So you get the point. It's from or it turned into much later Us and Them, which is actually on the Dark Side of the Moon album. But it's just interesting that he just wasn't feeling that song. Just wasn't
Yeah,
really feeling it.
it's really really upsetting. Like, how do you hear that and say, no, this isn't right? Um, okay, Adam Hart Mother, 1970. So yeah, coming out of that Umaguma. This I think this idea for Adam Hart Mother, the whole idea of the album was David Gilmour's idea, according to Nick Mason. What they were building on with this, they wanted to try more orchestral tracks or backed by an orchestra. And there are two, the I think the first track and also the closing track. There are longer songs on this album, and so they were still experimenting with that as well. Um,
Really leaning into the pastoral theme here,
Yes.
especially
Yeah. Yeah. If
with
you
the
could tell
album
any from
art.
the cover, this cover summarizes Pastoral Floyd. And they were really trying to do something no one else. Like when they showed this, when Storm Thorgerson, the designer for this cover, showed it to the record executives. One of them, like, what are you trying to do? Put us out of business. So they were not happy. I still don't know. Nick Mason neglects to say where that story went and how they actually got them to approve it, but obviously they did. And yeah, I love this album. I have this album. Um, I've listened to it several times. It's very it's I Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast, which we're gonna get to, is really great. Summer '68, and I forget what the first song is that we're playing from it. If okay, so okay, this is a great example of this. Was a Roger Waters composition, and it's very laid back, but it's a great example of the rest of the band um, definitely making the song a lot better than if it was just him. Like it, it goes from being just an okay song to really a really underrated Pink Floyd track as soon as the rest of the guys come in. So here we go.
This is also a little bit of Roger Waters trying to get out Sid Barrett out of his system. So he there's also an interesting mention here. More Roger Waters talking about the fear of going insane because he's seen one of his close friends do that. And then we also get a little reference to Moon, which is another, I think, little seed of a future thing.
The Sid Barrett thing is definitely there. Like that, please don't put your wires in my brain if I go insane. Like he's definitely thinking about that, and he's still struggling with that. And the band, it wasn't just him. I think it was the whole band. Still at this point, still trying to shed that and trying to deal with it musically.
And that continued throughout their entire career. Like, I wish
Yeah.
you were here. That song or that song, "Shine On You Crazy Diamond," that's all about Sid Barrett, and we could do a whole other conversation about just that album. But we're gonna stick to this right now. So
Oh,
the next one you want to talk about is Summer '68.
I forget. I listened to this song way before I heard the whole album. I don't really remember how. But it is one of the few Rick Wright songs that he composed, put together, and actually he sings on it as well. And it's just a great track. Dan and I came to different interpretations. So from the lyrical content, me and my girlfriend, we listened to this song a lot, and we both love this track. And yeah, there's a clear narrative of what it seems to be singing about, where he's singing about doing shows and then having a one night stand with this woman, and it just being a series of just other people that he was seeing during that time. So he's going out on a limb saying, I think my interpretation is he has some regret over this. It's just he's singing about how when it was going on, he was sort of swept up in the moment and couldn't really do anything about it. Um, and Yeah, so there's a dark element of it, I think, where I always thought he was regretting it, but then Dan has a different.
Well, so it's definitely about that. He name drops a woman that he was seeing at the time. So it's definitely about you know everything Phil just said. But I also think that there's still a little bit of him trying to work Sid Barrett out into this. So to me, this seems like almost parts of this song almost seem like a response to what Sid was saying to them in Jug Band Blues. And just paying attention to some dates here, Sid left the band in April of '68. The band started writing music without him in summer of '68. So I just maybe I'm just going a little too deep on the Sid Barrett conspiracy train, but we'll let you guys think for yourselves here. Here's summer '68. I'm just saying there's going to be a playlist on the website after this, and I want you to listen to Jug Band Blues, and then I want you to listen to that and see if you notice any similarities between the songs. But it's absolutely about Charlotte Pringle.
At the same time. Um, yeah, great song. Kara commented in the thing. Yeah, the piano is really great on that. It's Rick Wright. He was always, I think, the great composer in the band. Um, Again, I brought up this guy earlier. Ron Geeson was the arranger for the orchestra, and he's all over this album. Like they couldn't have done it without him. So, and he's kind of been forgotten. I think like he kind of was the George Martin of this album, and it's just worth mentioning his name because um, he's a big part of it. Nice. All right, Alan's psychedelic breakfast. So this employs more of what Dan was talking about earlier. The Foley elements of and just recording very experimental stuff, as you'll hear.
They're
Um,
using more and more real life sounds in their music and starting to use human voices. So they're just setting up a microphone and letting people talk, which we definitely hear later on Dark Side of the Moon. So this is kind of like where they're figuring that out, kind of.
yeah, and it's I think definitely because I've heard this track so much by now. I'm not really sure why. I just keep coming back to it, but they are elevating everyday life, I think, and I don't know if they were setting out to do that. I don't know if they were trying to make making yourself breakfast or some tea sound as epic and as cool as this. Um, I don't know. I don't know because even in the book I've read from Nick Mason, like he doesn't really talk about that. So it's kind of a mystery. I don't know if they set out make the mundane aspects of life this cool, but they certainly did.
And we're not going to play the whole song
No.
just because there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of just noise. So I'm gonna do my best. This is another one of those tricky ones where I have to hit it like right at the the right spot. So I'm gonna do my best here. So apologies for the noise on the last one, but that's what it is sometimes.
Yeah, so that track and a few other tracks on the album, a track was laid down by Roger Waters on bass and Nick Mason on drums. Um, and it was the backing track that the orchestra was supposed to play to, and they did, but there was an error, or what Nick Mason would call an unerasable spill, and because of that, in his words, he said the album lacked the sonic clarity that the band was striving for, and unfortunately, they ended the
And
whole
he thought
album.
the other album was pretentious.
But they ended the whole note. His comment on that album, that they all felt as a band was good idea, try harder. So they really over the years have not talked highly of this album. I love
and
it.
and that almost it kind of seems like a rough draft of the beginning of Dark Side of the Moon and
Absolutely.
various parts of Dark Side of the Moon.
That brings us to Metal, 1971. Our first time the band felt like a band since Saucer Full of Secrets, and a lot of Sid Barrett stuff we're
A lot
about
of
to get to.
speculative stuff up until this point, but this is the first like direct them saying, yeah, this is about Sid,
Yeah,
kind of.
this is an accepted theory by other music critics and whatnot. Yeah. Quote from Nick Mason was, the album as a whole, it's relaxed, quite loose, refreshingly straightforward, a clear indication of a way forward. Was how they felt with this album. Pillow of Winds. So this track. This is a progression off of Green. This is very similar to the first track we played tonight. Green is the color, I think, because it's also sung by David Gilmour, guitar based. Um, he definitely perfected it this time around though. Like this song is a gorgeous song, and one of the hallmarks of this pastoral era. Like this is when they got it perfect.
And to be clear, this isn't the song about Sid. This is more of him just
Yeah, this is not the one with the
taking mundane things and making them more romantic than they need to be, maybe.
very romantic. Definitely romantic. But definitely a great example of the collaboration between Roger Waters and Gilmore. I couldn't find who wrote what, but it was, I think they both worked on the lyrics and the melody for that song, and the great, Lennon McCartney example, I think, of how well they work together.
So the next one we wanted to talk about is "Fearless," which Phil and I were talking about is probably of this bunch might be the most well-known song. This is the
Definitely.
one that is pretty much directly about Sid Barrett, the founding member of Pink Floyd. It kind of references times they had in the past where he would stand at the front of the stage in front of an audience at a live show and just stare at the audience and do absolutely nothing, or untune his guitar and just make crazy, absolute, insane noises. Um, but this is another just really, really beautiful song from this period.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, I think in the other songs so far and the ones they do later, there's a lot of sadness and regret. Um, just how much they miss their friend. And this song particularly though, um, I like it because they're sort of using him as an individual, I think, and just sort of saying like it's okay, you're gonna be okay. Like we got your back. Um, and it's really, if you think of it that way, it's pretty heartbreaking. But it kind of it's a great song. So I'll let the song do the rest of the talking.
And then there's also a little secret message from Roger Waters to Sid Barrett at the end of the song, which just it kind of is also another seed of just like the random sound sampling that Pink Floyd was just experimenting with at this time. So at the end of the song there, that chanting that you hear is actually the Liverpool Football Club chant, which is a Rodgers and Hammerstein song from Carousel, from the musical Carousel. And it's just like this really beautiful message from Roger to Sid saying like, "Hey, we're here for you, but like, you know,
Yeah, no, and just there's so many meaningful lyrics throughout that whole song, but the one that I love the most, because I think it changes between verses, is you'll climb that hill in your own way, and then later in the song it's the I will climb that hill in my own way. Like it's again, I think they were trying to send him a hopeful message at the time, and other people too, because it's very resonant.
Phil and I were talking about which member of the band, like what each member of the band represents, and the only one we could really agree on is that Sid Barrett is the soul of the band, just because he was with them throughout their entire career, um, just like in their heads and inspired them musically. So it's just really interesting. And then we have San Tropez.
San Tropez. Okay. So this song has been the most that I've read about it. The band doesn't say much about it, um, but it's considered filler. And both Dan and I disagree with this. We think it's a fine song,
It's
very
so
quirky.
good. I love.
It's great. It's really good. Roger Waters wrote it about some trip, holiday. They were in France in Saint Tropez, and yeah, it's just about that trip. They're just like hanging
It's
around at this
just
place.
we've had a lot of like heavy and just like romantic and then sad Pink Floyd songs. It's about time we have one that's just really happy. You know.
Like funky, and yeah, it's great. So good. Um, Definitely, the band effort is coming back with that. Like it's Roger Waters' song, but the rest of the band's contributions, David Gilmour's slide guitar solo, and that is so groovy, and the piano all throughout. It's and the drums. It's a great song. Yeah. So okay. So yeah, metal was certainly the high point, the high watermark of this whole pastoral era. That's People know Fearless, people know Pillow of Winds way better, I think, than anything else we've talked about, other than maybe Careful with That Axe, Eugene. Um, this album is a dark horse favorite of mine. It was another soundtrack they embarked on for this same filmmaker from the More album movie from before, and it was recorded over a very short time, 2 weeks in France. Nick Mason, in his book, says he only was able to enjoy the place like the last day that they were there, and he said he was really mad about that. Um, but yeah, it's a great album. It's a lot of it does sound. It sounds like they're jamming out like in a very good, clean way. Like they're getting a lot of these ideas out of their system.
Oh, I was just gonna say this is the last album of their pastoral period.
Yes.
So this is like the final cleansing point of just trying to get everything out, and seeing what they've been experimenting with and how it's going to keep affecting them.
Yeah, and it's very tight. Like I think there are a few instrumentals on this album, but they're a lot shorter, more contained. These next two songs, though, they are dealing with death, so it was on their mind, and whether that was in a physical or mental, if that was either of those things that they were, I don't know which they were dealing with, but it is definitely on their minds, and it's crazy to think of, because what they would accomplish after this album is incredible. So
And it's really interesting because they started this period with a soundtrack and ended it with a soundtrack, and I feel like they had a lot more creative room on those than they did on their studio albums, which were still kind of they had to fight for some of that wacky stuff.
yeah.
But these filmmakers were like, yeah, we like it, except for the one guy who,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
Antonio
Antonio,
Noni,
but
Noni,
no, no,
Noni,
it does.
whatever.
You're right, though. It does give. I think they had an element of freedom on both of these soundtrack albums, where they were just able to do whatever, and you certainly feel the freedom on this album. Like they're
And
just
and
yeah.
as Phil was saying, like this is also them growing up. So this is a period of a couple of years where they've had to deal with a lot of adult things, which they hadn't. They had just been like an acid rock band until then. And so this is the start of them realizing the world around them, and like that maybe it's not such a great thing, and that age kind of knowledge comes with age,
Yeah.
which is definitely explored on Dark Side of the Moon. But the first one we're gonna play is more of a just like a fun, just this is like a Pink Floyd pop rock and roll song, but like only as Pink Floyd could do.
And I don't think, again, I really don't think they would have tried something like this if they knew, it was for a proper LP. Like I do think the fact that this exists is a fluke just because they were like, you know what? Let's just try it, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like fuck it, let's just have fun.
Exactly. So fun.
Phil didn't want to let me play that, and I had to fight for like 2 weeks to get that on today's playlist. He was like, "No, no, it sucks. That song sucks."
None of that's true. No, the only thing I suggested was I think Dan wanted to round out. He wanted to end on that song, and I wanted to end on this song. What's the deal? And I think, in my defense,
It's a better call. It is a better call, I will say.
I do think that because this is chronological, I think Free For comes before this song on the album, so I think we're still doing it the way they would have wanted anyway. But anyway, I think this song it rounds out the whole era pretty great. They're still talking about getting old and dying and getting cold and all these things. It's very dark, but it's a very beautiful song. And again, definitely you can hear contributions from each of the four band members so prominently, and it really rounds it out. And it's a great track, and it really brings this whole period to a great close. Like, it's a great ending track for this whole era, I think.
And it's a lot of fun to say, so I want to let Phil introduce it because I think he's better at saying it.
Okay, this is "What's the Deal" by Pink Floyd on their album "Obscured by Clouds." And that's
Well,
it.
that brings us to the end of the pastoral period. I just wanted to thank you all for coming. Phil, was there anything you wanted to say about?
No, no, no. Go on, Dan.
Okay,
I'm
all right.
good.
Thank you all for coming. This was a lot of fun to do. Phil and I've been working on this for a little bit. As you all know, I run a page called B-Sides and Beers. It's become this fun little music community that loves doing stuff like this, and usually every Saturday I've been putting it on hold for a while, and I'll pick it back up again in the new year. I do something called B-Sides and Brunch, where I play 30 different songs with some trivia and a lot of fun. Um, I'm going to be doing a Christmas show this Saturday. So check out the website bsidesandbeers.com/events. Check out the B-Sides and Cheers Christmas Bonanza. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I will say, once brunch is picked back up, I really need you guys to come in and join, because we've had, I don't think he's on right now, but we've had somebody sweep the last 5 or 6 brunches. He's won the trivia every time. So we need some people to hop in there and defeat him. The next one of these events we're gonna do is gonna be in January. I'm gonna be hosting it. It's gonna be a Grateful Dead night. So I'm just trying to get more of you into the Dead. There's a big discography, much like Pink Floyd. So definitely hop in there, and I'm gonna play the songs that I definitely think you need to hear, just as an introductory Grateful Dead night. Um, as we usually do, we plan to keep going if you guys are interested. So thanks all for joining. That's the end of the discussion. But now we're gonna maybe listen to the next album in chronological order, right after this Pink Floyd song or Pink Floyd album. We're gonna listen to Dark Side of the Moon next. But I just wanted to say thanks to Phil Jampo for helping put this together. He's done a lot of work on this, and just give him a virtual round of applause. Thanks for
No,
joining.
thanks for having me, Dan. Whoever's on here right now, everyone should do one of these. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I'm really interested
just
to hear
check out
other
my
people's.
contact page. If there's anything you guys want to talk about, just let me know. And Phil and I just kind of threw this together. It's really up to whoever wants to do it. If there's something you're passionate about, let me know. Phil was passionate about this part of Pink Floyd, and there's definitely some stuff that I learned from this. So it's a lot of fun. Let me know. Thanks again, Phil. You did a great job, man.